Alright, hello everyone, it's the Fuzzy Unibrow here, and today I wanted to talk about some of the worries that I have about Halo 6 and really any Halo game that will be released in the near future. And the reason why I say this is because if you haven't noticed, aside from one video that I've posted so far, I've basically taken a shot at Halo 5 in almost every single video. And to clarify, no, I don't have anything wrong against multiplayer, right? The mechanics are great. It's a testament to the fact that 343 is capable of creating a solid game. They actually managed to evolve Halo. Who would have thought of that almost a year ago at this point in time? What I have a problem with Halo 5 is that the lack of content day one was disturbing, to say the least. Not only that, but for the first time ever, we were delivered a Halo game in which its storytelling was god-awful. So if you haven't played Halo 5 story, I suggest you don't. You're not really missing much aside from the fact that some crazy shit went down. Not really. Basically, after the first two missions in the game, which were well done in my opinion, the game throws the plot at you with no explanation as to how things got to this point. Right? We have our confrontation between Locke and the Chief, and then we have a filler story arc with St. Helios, in which the Arbiter is basically a throwaway character, and then we have the conclusion. Throughout this entire process, there is no conflict. None of the members of Fireteam Osiris really say that, oh, they're with the Chief or they're against him. We get like maybe one or two lines of dialogue, but that's it. There's no definitive line that says, I hate the Chief, or, he needs to pay for what he did. There's like one line of dialogue that kind of isn't a direct answer. Like, we'll make sure that that whoever's responsible pays for it. It never says, the Chief is guilty or he's innocent. Nothing like that. The Arbiter is a throwaway character, so to me, the St. Helios story arc is just filler. It's like the story team didn't know how to bridge the second act with the final act. And the reason why I call it filler is because the Arbiter really provides no insight into who the Master Chief is and really why he would do the things that he's doing. Primarily because no context is given to his relationship with Cortana. Instead, they make you assume, or they lead you as the player, to assume that you know everything, so we don't have to address that in the game. That to me is a problem. And, at first I was thinking, okay, maybe the storytelling team got ahead of themselves. They tried to tell an apocalyptic story and a personal story at the same time. And this is backed up by one of the short video documentaries that they did about the game.
Got this big galaxy-spanning story. Oh, there's these attacks that are happening on colonies. There's this massive destruction that's happening. Somebody stop it. Somebody save the day. But at the heart of it is, again, this story of these two families and these two things that they want.
Recently, a Halo YouTuber decided to spill the beans on development, not just on Halo 5 Guardians, but on the Master Chief Collection itself. This YouTuber's name is LateNightGaming. He's not that big of a Halo YouTuber, all things considered. He's definitely not as big as a Halo follower or Ready Up Live. But the reason why I'm bringing his video up is because he provides really good points. And he does show evidence to back his claims up. Unfortunately, in the video he notes that he has to rush the current video because he's running low on time. And I think that this kind of contributed to the backlash that he ended up receiving, in a sense that while the video does show evidence, it doesn't exactly show enough evidence for you to say, oh, he might actually have a point. Basically, the video that he made leaves it up to you to assume whether or not what he's telling is true, or whether it's a lie. while I was, watching this, I was kind of telling myself, if he's lying, what would he gain from this? And really at this point, with 8 months after, or however long it's been since Halo 5 has launched, really at this point, who cares if Halo 5 was a catastrophe or whether it was a success, right? It was a partial success, right? The multiplayer succeeded even though it had a lack of content, the lack of playlists, the fact that the population just completely disappeared. At one point, Halo 5 Guardians dropped out of the top 10 most played Xbox games, which is pretty sad considering that it's supposed to be a flagship title. The campaign was a god-awful disaster. And so this video kind of brought insight really as to what went wrong with Halo 5. And I went and started doing some research because in this video he seems to point out that Halo 5 originally had an open world concept. And there was this leak that I found on IGN that almost to the letter lines up perfectly with what LateNightGaming was saying, in the sense that the Brutes were supposed to be the main faction that you were going up against, because in this leak they mentioned Brutes and Scarabs going up against the Forerunner War Sphinx, and that they would use the cloud to help render this battle without using the Xbox, so that it wouldn't take up so much hardware. And they also seem to suggest that there was this progression type system for your character as the chief, and also that you would be able to fast travel to other planets and stuff like that. So basically what this leak is insinuating is that Halo 5 was supposed to be kind of like Destiny, in a sense that it was kind of open world. You would have these battles, so to speak, and basically what Halo 5 would end up looking like is a Destiny and a Star Wars The Old Republic meshed together, in the sense that it would still be a first-person shooter, but you would still be able to see these battles going on while you were roaming. You could either choose to ignore it, or you could actually take part in what was going on. But it got me thinking a little bit. And for the first time ever, I kind of realized just how much damage Halo 5 Guardians did to the franchise in terms of storytelling. Not multiplayer, I'll repeat that again, not multiplayer, just in terms of storytelling. If we're going to have this problem, right, how in the world are the story, how's the storytelling team and the writers themselves going to account for such a lackadaisical effort when it came to storytelling in Halo 5? And the answer is, whatever the answer is probably not going to be good. The best probable way, looking at this from a far enough distance, if you want to repair a story, usually what you do is that you usually do some form of spin-offs. In this case, novels, in which case they don't exactly lead up to the next installment, but they still add to the universe. For example, Hunters in the Dark, Last Light, New Blood, the comic book series, they all add to the expanded universe of Halo, but they don't necessarily contribute to Halo 5. They do introduce new characters like Vale, Buck. We get to find out what happened to him after ODST. Last Light tells us what was going on with Blue Team post Halo 3. With Escalation, we got introduced to Tanaka. And even with Nightfall, which wasn't well done, we got introduced to Locke. And by the way, if that was supposed to be an introduction to the new face of the franchise, Jesus Christ, they failed so miserably at that. They failed miserably again with Halo 5 because they didn't do anything to justify Locke's characters and being in the Halo franchise altogether. They tried to provide interesting backstory with the Halo 2 anniversary terminals, but other than that, can you tell me what Locke is? Can you tell me what his personality is? What are his morals? What are his views? You know, what are his intentions going forward? You know, none of that was really, you know, it wasn't explored enough in the Halo 5 storyline. And quite frankly, I don't think they had the time, considering how short the gameplay is, how linear and how repetitive it gets at times. So many story subplots trying to converge into one. It really didn't make sense at the end of the day, and the cliffhanger just put a nice steaming load on top of the whole pile of garbage that was Halo 5 Guardians campaign. And really, when you look at future installments, and I don't know how many books are coming out afterwards, but if the future books revolve around trying to expand upon the state of the galaxy post Halo 5, I will be the first to say that I will be deeply disappointed, because it's basically damage control. It's a quote-unquote lazy way of trying to make amends for what happened in Halo 5. Not only that, but let's say Halo Wars 2 or Halo 6, it doesn't provide backstory as to what happened. And before I continue, I would like to point out, the reason why I say that, you know, I would be disappointed if they provide no backstory is that, yes, while I do read the books, and yes, I do know what happens, how do you think a guy who just picked up the game and played the story, how do you think they feel when they played Halo 5 Guardians? They're completely lost, right? Like, let's say you have a general synopsis of the Halo universe, right? And just the games. Because really, when you talk about the games, they should stand by themselves. Aside from the fact that maybe they're a sequel to a previous game. But usually, when you write a sequel to a story, right? And it's been a while since whoever's reading the story or witnessing the story or hearing the story, usually you're supposed to provide some kind of background knowledge so that the listener or the reader, or in this case the player / audience, doesn't get completely lost as to what the hell is going on. This happened in Halo 4, where we only get really 2 lines of dialogue that explain why we're fighting the Covenant again in Halo 4.
I thought we had a truce with the Covenant.
A lot can happen in 4 years. Either way, he's probably not alone. We should be careful.
And it's never explored upon the rest of the game, even though it's introduced in the first mission. In Halo 5 Guardians, the same thing occurs, right? We have this entire audio log series with Hunt the Truth. If you're a fan, if you've been following the news for Halo 5, you would automatically know why the UNSC would instantly question the Master Chief's intentions when it came to trying to chase down Cortana. And my disappointment is that basically after the first 2 missions, and this is for me when the story began to fall apart, was that they immediately, and we have this conversation between Palmer, Lasky, Halsey, and Roland.
I tried to warn you this was happening. Cortana is no longer an asset, Captain. She is a danger. She has access to the Forerunner domain, a galaxy-spanning network
Cortana's
that
alive?
allows her to control whatever devices caused this damage.
How is she?
Master Chief believes she contacted him.
No, John must not speak to her.
He's gone in search of her.
You let him go?
How is it
Nobody lets the chief do anything. He does what he wants.
Until 0631 this morning, when he was declared absent without leave.
This isn't about the Master
John
Chief.
is not equipped emotionally to deal with her as a threat.
Hey! Is anyone gonna answer me?
You're out of line, Roland.
Yes, sir, but so is everyone else. You created Cortana, Doc, and now you're throwing her out the airlock with these accusations.
Roland.
You think she tricked the Master Chief into abandoning his post? Respectfully, sir, to what end? Why is Cortana the problem? Because she refused to die when she was supposed to?
What bothers me about this scene is that no one brings up the Biko incident.
I needed to see the source material. It didn't take long to find. Everyone had the same file, a suppressed incident report from an embassy in the outskirts that had already been viewed almost 500 million times. What it said was perfectly clear. 10 days ago, in the outer colonies, the chief had suddenly appeared in the middle of a densely populated city at a regional embassy, where inside, long-awaited peace talks between human and alien delegates were on the cusp of an historic agreement. The chief stormed in and instantly killed the bodyguard of Outer Colonies Ambassador Richard Sakibo, starting a firefight that would claim 19 human lives. He abducted the ambassador and blasted an escape path through security personnel, mowing them down with extreme prejudice as he escorted the alien delegation to safety. Once aboard his waiting evac ship, they fled the planet, leaving years of diplomatic work in ruins. The next day, local officials picked up a signal beacon that led them to a nearby field. There, they found the architect of the talks, revered peace activist Richard Sakibo, last seen in the chief's custody, lying dead in the grass.
You know, after a while, the UNSC took its sweet time with declaring the Master Chief's innocence. Basically, once they managed to prove that the chief himself was innocent, that they took their sweet little time, and all this chaos was erupting in the outer colonies because of it. And it was largely in part due to Benjamin Giroir's breaking news storyline that was going on there. But in Halo 5 Guardians, there is no mention to these incidents. There's no mention to any sort of events that would make one say, you know, the Master Chief has gone too far this time, or he's done this one too many times. Now's the time to, put the foot on the neck and say no, or here's the line, you can't cross it, and if you do, we're going to come after you. There's no context to why this happens, so they just kind of throw the plot at you, and unless you're a fan of the universe, right, unless you're a fan of the lore, unless you've read the comics, unless you've read the books, you really don't know why people are questioning the Chief. It's the same thing in Halo 4, right? You're fighting the Covenant again, unless... See, if you vividly remember the ending to Halo 3, right, you finish the fight, and let's say you still remember this ending years later, but you never read any of the books, you never read any of the Halo 5 trilogy, which, quite frankly, that was a terrible trilogy from the books. But if you never read any of the Halo 5 trilogy, then you wouldn't know why the Covenant are uprising again. And even then, they still don't really explain how the Storm Covenant rose up. Aside from the fact that Jul 'Mdama breaks out of prison, he randomly jumps through a portal, lands in the middle of a Sangheili planet that didn't know about the Great Schism, and somehow manages to get a bunch of blind followers to follow him. And this is how the Storm Covenant is created. I found that explanation to be complete horseshit when I first read it. I didn't like Thursday War because of it. Aside from that, they kind of cock-teased the Arbiter's gonna die, and then finally, Jesus, the whole fucking book was terrible. Mortal Dictator was okay for me. I actually found myself rooting for the villain. But anyways, back to what I was saying. There's only really 2 lines of dialogue that explains what happens with the Covenant in between Halo 3 and Halo 4. This is 4 to 5 years after the events of Halo 3, and there's no explanation as to why these things happen. And another thing, right? Unless you've read any of the Forerunner saga, the Didact literally appears to come out of nowhere as this surprise villain who no one saw coming, unless you read the Forerunner saga, because if you read the Forerunner saga, you would have predicted who the villain was for Halo 5. And God, look, yes, I do realize that the terminals explain the Didact's backstory, but at the time of Halo 4's release, you had to leave the game, download an app. At the time it was Halo Waypoint, and with the Master Chief Collection, it's Halo Channel. You had to download an app just to watch that terminal. You couldn't watch it in-game like Halo CE Anniversary did. You actually had to leave the game. And really, there's this rule in storytelling. if you have to go away from the story that you are telling to understand what's going on, then the storyteller has failed at storytelling. This is no different, right? For Halo 5, you have to understand what happened in 3 novels, maybe even 4, right? With Last Light, Hunters in the Dark, New Blood, and Saint's Testimony. You have to know what happened in Halo Escalation to kind of figure out what the hell happened after Halo 4. You have to understand that in the Escalation comics they killed off the Didact, hence why he doesn't return. You have to understand a 2-series story arc in Escalation to understand who's Tanaka. You have to read Hunters in the Dark to get a brief synopsis of who Vale is. You have to read Last Light, Ghosts of Onyx, Fall of Reach. Am I missing another one? Probably not. In an attempt to really understand who Blue Team is. You have to watch the animated series that they launched with Halo 5. Oh, by the way, you had to pre-order a special edition for that in order to understand the attachments with Blue Team. Really, nothing really is explained. Like, who is Blue Team? Unless you've read any of the novels or any of the comics, you can't answer that question. You just know that they trained with the Master Chief and that's it. That they went through a lot of engagements together, right? They're the most decorated unit in the UNSC history. That's all the explanation that you get. And you could say, well, that's all you need. But considering who Blue Team is and how important they are to the Master Chief, more explanation is needed. To be exact, the player should be able to visualize it that way that they get the, I guess you could say, the viewpoint that they should care for these guys. Not only that, but due to the limited amount of time that Blue Team gets in this game, it's just so bad. There's no character development for Blue Team, and I'm shocked that I'm saying this because I actually think that they wrote a competent dialogue with Blue Team despite the fact that there's hardly any of it. Now, the reason why I'm pointing this all towards Halo 6 or Halo Wars 2. In Halo Wars 2, and really this will be the deciding factor of whether or not they'll be able to salvage the storytelling experience for Halo, is that if in Halo Wars 2, and it's been confirmed that it takes place 27 years after the previous Halo Wars game, which puts this around the time that Halo 5 occurs. If they show up in this new galaxy and all of the events from the previous games are just ignored, right? If we ignore everything that has happened with even James Cutter himself, for example, his wife is really, really old, maybe dead. His daughter's old enough to have kids of her own. His son betrayed the UNSC, oddly enough. So if stuff like that is ignored in favor of just throwing the plot at us again, then I honestly believe that Halo 6 is ruined. Because when you ignore previous major events, like let's say Halo Wars 2 happens, right? And no one mentions that Cortana literally took over the galaxy. You've lost the whole point. Like that was like it's supposed to be a major reveal to the crew of the Spirit of Fire that the universe that they once knew, while it's not as chaotic, it's now even stranger and more dangerous than it was before. And really, again, if they decide to gloss over all of that, maybe somewhat give a mention to it, but then just go full steam ahead with the rest of the plot, then I have to say that Halo Wars 2 has already failed, if that is the case. And Halo Wars 6 has failed, or not Halo Wars 6, Halo 6 2 fails if it completely decides to ignore previous events. Now, if more books come out, and if they do indeed play a major role into what's going on, then there does need to be a reference to said events in the game. This is why Halo 5 to me fails. It's a small reason why it fails. But if they decide to gloss over it in Halo Wars 2, and if they decide to gloss over it again in Halo 6, all hope is lost for the storytelling in this game. As far as multiplayer goes, really, day one, they need to have more content. You can't just have 6.5 playlists. And what I mean by 6.5 playlists is that really 2 playlists, which are Warzone and Warzone Assault, really is just one playlist with different variation in game types. It's really all it is. It's like Slayer Pro and Slayer. Like, what if you decided to split them off into 2 separate playlists? They're still the same. They just have different gameplay settings. That's really it. Although Warzone Assault does play more to I want to say invasion, but it's still technically Warzone. And I know that they've added Firefight, but they stripped out Big Team Battle. They stripped out Forge. Capture the Flag is still not a playlist of its own. We still have no social playlist in Halo 5, which is pretty sad. Do you imagine what would have happened if the first day of launch you literally have competitive, social, and then Warzone? Do you know how many people, considering how good Halo 5's gameplay actually is, do you know how many people would have actually stuck with Halo 5 multiplayer instead of jumping ship to the next big release? Chances are they would have come back and played every now and then. And then with all of this new content and DLC that's coming out, we could have had an even more bigger experience. I think that's it. Jesus, I'm looking at 25 plus minutes of audio. Quick update real quick on the Halo 6 predictions part 2 that I promised to drop this week. I continue to run into problems on Halo Channel, and I figured out that the app doesn't allow you to record the terminals, even though you didn't have to pay for them. You know, they won't allow you to record the terminals because apparently that's somehow stealing content, even though I paid $60 for Halo 4 Day 1 and $250 for Halo 5 Guardians Day 1 as well. Right? And I'm just using them for educational purposes, so they fall within fair use. So that's another discussion for a later time. I'm thinking about using screenshots with background music to kind of tell my points. But I don't feel like, you know, the quality of the video would be all that great. So I might skip to part 3 and then do part 2 as a part 3 if you understand what I'm saying. But anyways, if you liked the video, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
Yeah, got me in this party all up in the zone. Hottest Betty's trying to take away my cell phone. Like, come and party, I've been trying to shake you off my mind, but just can't get you off me. Keep it moving, they ain't worth it, yeah, that's what my father taught me. But for now, I'm going through the motions of letting go. Cause my mind's telling me yes, but my heart really don't know. Your heart went dark out of nowhere, yet I still see it glow. Swear we had the hottest love, why'd you leave me in the cold? I feel wrong for even writing this poem, you don't deserve it. You stabbed me in the chest and took my heart and left me hurt.